Vice President, the Vice Chancellor, of course, Australian New Zealand High Commissioners, the Chancellor, USP, the Governor of the Reserve Bank, Permanent Secretary of Finance, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me much pleasure to be here. The wonderful thing about having two esteemed speakers before you don't actually have to say much, because they've actually said it all for you. But it gives me much pleasure to be here at the opening, as I would like to essentially highlight what the Vice Chancellor has mentioned, and then obviously some of the challenges that's faced by the Pacific Island countries. Inclusive growth and enhanced resilience, obviously, can have a number of connotations and indeed meanings and applications. It's not just primarily for the economy, but as highlighted by the High Commissioner, it does address issues or needs to address issues such as the actual social matters within society. As I said, if you take from purely economic, commercial perspective, tourism, of course, is very big in the Pacific. Indeed, it contributes about 35% towards our GDP in Fiji. A majority of the people who work in the tourism sector are women. People who clean after you, people who wait on you, people who clean your bathrooms, your bedrooms, sweep around the place. They are women. If they're being bashed up the night before at home, what do you think their levels of productivity would be the next day? What do you think is the rate of absenteeism? Our garment industry, of course, plummeted from about 20,000 workers to about 3,000 workers. Today it's grown to about 7,000 workers because Fiji is able to remodel itself as a garment manufacturing center, if you like, for specialized or doing low volume but high end. So we've got about 7,000, 8,000 workers. Majority of them, 95% of them are women. So it is everybody's responsibility to ensure that we bring such matters into the public domain. They should not be captured or only relegated to the private domain, and indeed it's not something that should only be talked about by women's organizations. It is everybody's business. The Pacific, of course, faces a number of opportunities but also challenges at the same time. We do not, for example, have the economies of scale within our own countries. We do not have economies of scale surrounding us. As I said at the International Forum recently, in the Southern Pacific we have a population base of about 10 million people, of which nearly 8 million comes from Papua New Guinea. Balance of the 2 million is shared by 12 or 13 other countries. So your ability to attract private sector investment, your ability to have a lot more competition within your market, your ability to, for example, restructure your state-owned enterprises does become limited because of the fact that you do not necessarily have economies of scale. Because your ability to attract private sector participation, again, is limited because of the fact that many companies won't look at you because you don't necessarily have the volume. So it is very, very important, therefore, that the Pacific Island countries actually do collaborate with each other. And this is why such a forum is very critical, because it does bring the Pacific Island countries together. It does provide the opportunity to look at many of the challenges that actually are cross-cutting within the Pacific Island countries. And hopefully the donor countries, the various development partners, funding agencies, are able to also take a leaf or actually gain some knowledge from that. And we of course need to learn from what is happening within the wider sort of context outside the Pacific. Just to give you an example, we have in Fiji we have something like about 105% more SIM cards than the actual population base for IT for mobile phones. Because of course some people, as you know, have more than 2 mobile phones. So there are more SIM cards than actual people in Fiji. But that does not necessarily mean that everybody is connected in Fiji. It does not necessarily mean that we don't have, black spots or brownouts. We have, of course, at the same time, a very sort of substantial gap in the connectivity between the Pacific Island countries. We are very lucky at the moment. For example, the Samoans are now building a cable or laying a cable from Samoa to come to Batuanga here to connect to the Southern Cross Cable. And Fiji, of course, is very lucky to have the Southern Cross Cable land in Fiji. So the Samoans are building a cable that will pass between Taveuni and and Banwalevu, that will then give us the opportunity to build a pipe out of it and land it in Southern, for a cost of about $6 to $7 million US, to get the people of Banwalevu connected. We talk about sort of the challenges of rural-urban drift. We talk about huge-scale migration from Banwalevu, people living in squatter areas in Subanusori corridor, and many reasons why they do come to these places. Of course, apart from things like land leases not being renewed, is also the availability and accessibility to modern-day services. So the challenge, of course, for Pacific Island countries is to be able to connect the people within. And I think that's part and parcel of the inclusive growth. Because if you do not have inclusive growth, as the High Commissioner also mentioned, then you actually continue to marginalize people. And this is why we have decided also, recently at the World Bank gathering in Washington, to look at the measures of inequality within society. And inequality, or your measurement of how well you're doing, is not simply measured by your growth rates per se, but it must actually be measured by inequalities that exist within society itself. And I'm happy to say that Fiji, at least in this context, the inequality levels have dropped quite significantly compared to what it was about 10 to 12 years ago. So for Pacific Island countries, I think, as far as development partners are also concerned, is that I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to collaborate. I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, probably slightly more than that, we had the Solomon Islands minister, and we had meetings with him in Suva, and they talked about some anti-competitive behavior that existed in Honiara. They did not necessarily have the skills and the resources to set up a separate Commerce Commission. So we sent across some people from the Commerce Commission in Fiji to help them, at least whether put in place some measurements that they can monitor through the Ministry of Commerce. But I think there's a lot of opportunities within the Pacific for Pacific Island countries to collaborate. Some of us, of course, have advantages over other countries, and they may have other advantages in specific other areas that we may not necessarily have. So the idea is, and also with the academics here, with the various people who may have done research and all the other stakeholders, it is also very important for the government officials who are here to be able to tap into your knowledge base for governments to make good decisions. Because I think the ability to make decisions for government and the right decisions is greatly enhanced once we have perhaps a plethora of ideas that we can actually choose from and see what is most suitable for us. I know we're supposed to finish the session at 9:10. We've already gone past that by 10 minutes. But just very quickly, I think also the other point that I'd like to highlight is there's a very critical need to capacity build within the Pacific. We have recently, and much to our delight, we have been talking a lot about in the international fora about the ability to upscale our staff, the government officials in the Pacific, not just in Fiji, but in the Pacific widely. For example, to be able to access climate finance. It's called climate finance, something called green climate fund finance. But it is a bureaucratic jungle. It is a bureaucratic nightmare to be able to access these funds. You can access some of these funds through grants. You can access some of these funds through soft loans. But there's a number of permutations through which you can actually put together proposals. But there's very little knowledge about it. So we've gone into partnership with UNESCO, and we're beginning from next month, we are holding some informal sessions and bringing in Pacific Island officials to know about climate finance. The reality is that we are the cold face of climate change, notwithstanding the fact that our carbon footprint is always negligible, but the fact of the matter is that we are the cold face of climate change, and we need to build resilience, not just at the economic level, but also physical resilience. But in order to do that, you need to be able to access the funds. And in order to do that, you need to know how to navigate through this maze of accessing funds. So it's this capacity building that is very, very critical, and we're trying to build that capacity building, within the Pacific region. We've also overall, just to give you an example, I think what is really critically important is recently we were at a gathering in Singapore, well, probably not recently, but before Cyclone Winston, where the Singaporean government has, on a biennial basis, held meetings of civil aviation ministers meetings. And ICAO now has decided to jump into the area of carbon emissions. So rather than looking at the overall carbon footprint of a country, they're actually looking at the carbon footprint of the civil aviation industry per country, which means that all of a sudden Fiji's carbon footprint is greater than Australia's. Because the reality is that the Pacific Island countries cannot actually drive to each other's country. We actually have to invariably fly. So the carbon footprint for the civil aviation industry becomes greatly enhanced. So this week on Thursday, as it transpired from the meeting in Singapore, we are holding a meeting of civil aviation ministers in Nadi to be able to have a joint position to the ICAO meeting in Montreal in September to say that this methodology of aggregating your carbon footprint is completely wrong, because you need to be able to look at the overall carbon footprint of a country. So there are specific needs of the Pacific Islanders. They need to actually fly more than perhaps a French person who can drive across to Switzerland or wherever they can drive to, or go by train, whereas we can't. So these are some of the issues that I hope that you're able to discuss too, in respect of some of the specific challenges vis-a-vis international standards and norms that are being set that could actually put us out of kilter. And I think that is very, very critical to also discuss. Similarly, our ability to connect to various other, for example, restructural reforms that takes place in state-owned enterprises, I think is very critical to be able to contextualize it in the Pacific context. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all a very successful workshop, conference, and I'd like to thank once again ADB for their participation and collaboration with the ESP. Of course, the Australian government through the ANU has participated in this previously, and I'd like to thank them for that, and I wish you all a very good morning. Good night.